Hello and welcome back everyone to the first session, The Need for Universal Ethics in the Crisis-Ridden Contemporary World. And we have Dr. Kaveri Gill as our chairperson for this session, and we have Dr. T.K. Mishra ji, Dr. Tanuja Sharma ji, and Dr. Renuka Singh ji, and Father Dr. Matthew Chandrakunal for this session. Before I proceed, I would like to read a brief bio of our chairperson, Dr. Kaveri Gill. Dr. Kaveri Gill is an associate professor, Department of International Relations and Governance Studies, Shivnadar University. She completed a BA Tripos, MPhil, PhD, and postdoctoral Smuts fellowship at the University of Cambridge, UK. Dr. Kaveri has more than 15 years work experience with a range of institutions, including academia, government, multilateral and bilateral donors, international organizations, and development consultancies. Prior to returning to academia, she has worked with the Planning Commission, Government of India, UNICEF, the International Development Research Center, and Oxford Policy Management. She has published widely, including a monograph with Oxford University Press of Poverty and Plastic Scavenging and Scrap Trading Entrepreneurs in India's Urban Informal Economy. Before I hand over the session to Dr. Kaveri Gill, I would like to make it clear that every speaker has 20 minutes each, and we would be skipping the question and answer session for this session. Now I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Kaveri Gill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tenshula. So, Tashi Delik, and hello to everybody. So I am first, always I add another introduction that in this context, I am a student of Venerable Geshe Dorji Namdullah. So that's my other very critical identity now, and that always makes me a bit more nervous than other situations. So this panel is going to speak about the need for universal ethics in the crisis-ridden contemporary world. So I'm going to start with a verse by Acharya Dignav, the one who was transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit all sentient beings, the teacher, Shugata, and protector, to you I pay homage. So this is a very famous verse of salutation to Buddha Shakyamuni. And in this context, because the conclave is about education, so to give salutation for, somebody who has who was one of the greatest teachers, even in the modern context. And in today's world, we heard in the first panel, I would say that there is no teacher akin to His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And why do I say this? Because in his own life, if you see the context of from when he was 15 years old, the role he took on in Tibet, he came to India as a 24-year-old. Apart from his spiritual and monastic education, his learning of language, of world politics, context, history, and today a proponent of science, and of course universal ethics. Venerable Geshe mentioned I would say he's the world's greatest proponent at this present time of the idea of universal ethics, His Holiness. And his definition, which Venerable Geshe set out, is really one that draws on common ground between different religions and also non-believers. So what are the kind of ethics and values that we can all agree upon, without strife? And recently, the Central Tibetan Administration had a Thank You India function. So today I stand here as an Indian. Shri Dr. Kapila Vatsayanji spoke very movingly about, while they are thanking us, how there was really a need for us to thank His Holiness, because not only has he embodied the Nalanda philosophical tradition, and ancient Indian wisdom in that context, but he has really, lived the values that we as a country and as an Arya Bhumi have lay claim to. He has embodied it. He has, espoused. We heard earlier from Dr. Seringla. His activities are inconceivable. If you think of him coming as a 24-year-old person to this country, setting up TCV, setting up monastic university, setting up LTWA, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, setting up higher education institutions, setting up mind and life conferences. It's just absolutely so inspirational. And so Dr. Shri Kapila Vatsanji started crying when she said that, she as a much older Indian person now, she said one can be critical about one's own country, that it is a kind of a day of shame that, they are saying thank you to us rather than we saying thank you. So I will reiterate that today in this context. Our need to give thanks to His Holiness and the Tibetan people for, what they have rejuvenated and brought up in this country. And I stand here, Dr. Mishra mentioned Kathua. I stand also as an Indian woman today in shame. We are all reading the newspapers. What has happened, is absolutely something that, we have to deeply reflect that today, in this modern world, are we really still that Arya Bhumi that we lay claim to? Because, and I say this because for the first time in Kathua, it is communities who are riven over something that, when we talk about Shenpen, I never knew the Tibetan word, but if you think about others before self, and if we think of Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings in a very simple nutshell, they can be of various interpretations, but it is about wisdom and compassion. And that really should speak to all, human beings. Then we have to question ourselves. And again, there are many young people sitting in this room, so I will also say the global challenges, of course, the wars, sectarian, all of that, but technology, where I myself didn't know, but I learned 2 weeks ago that now you can 3D print many things, and there's going to soon be a time when you can be 3D printing arms and ammunition that won't even be picked up by like detectors at airports and all. So for the younger people in this room, I'm very happy. I'm in my 40s and I'm also part of a generation that is quickly going to exit while I'm sorry to say it is, but also hopeful. Like His Holiness is very hopeful. His hope is with, the youngsters and the people who are going to face many challenges. So it's a wonderful occasion that Ramanujan College, Tibet House, the Dalai Lama Institute, and so many august institutions we've gathered together. So without taking any more time, I'll quickly introduce the speakers. So Dr. Mishra did his PhD from the Delhi School of Economics and is currently teaching as associate professor in the Department of Commerce, Ramanujan College. He has 35 years teaching experience and has been the director for 5 years for the Center for Ethics and Values. And he's organized many international conferences on ethics and is the editor of the International Journal of Applied Ethics. The next speaker will be Professor Tanuja Sharma. She's currently professor in Management Development Institute, Gurgaon. Her PhD is from the Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi, on performance management, for which she received the Mercer Award Asia in 2005. Singapore for innovative practical Asian human resource research. She is engaged in teaching human resources specialization papers and a course on business ethics, which of course is also going to be a very critical thing in a world with a lot of corporate interests and power. And at present, she is also studying the MA with Venerable Geshe-la at Tibet House. The speaker following is Professor Renuka Singh, who is a sociologist who's taught at the Center for the Study of Social Systems at Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. She is also director of the Shita Mahayana Meditation Center and the chairperson of the Punjabi Sahit Sabha and Center for Social Research, New Delhi. She has also been a research fellow at Oxford University and UGC senior research scientist. She has lectured in many foreign universities and has authored and edited over 15 books in the area of gender studies, diaspora, and Buddhist studies. And most of these books have also been translated into several languages. And our last speaker will be Professor Dr. Father Matthew Chandan Kunnel, who is the director of the Ecumenical Christian Center, Whitefield, Bangalore. He is also a member of the Ethics Committee of the Axonet Brain Research Lab, Bangalore. He is closely associated with science and Dharma centers at Sera J Monastery in Balagupe, teaching the monks physics and philosophy, and presented a paper at the Madhyamika Buddhism and Quantum Physics Conference organized by GNU, by the Dalai Lama Foundation. He has researched at Niels Bohr Institute, Copenhagen, the Max Planck Institute, Munich, and interacted with Nobel Prize winners like R.G. Bohr, Friedrich von Weizsäcker, and scientists like Abraham Pei, Peter Hodgson, etc. And he's also received the CTNS Templeton Award as a scientist and philosopher in 2000 and organized local, national, and international conferences on science and religion in Bangalore. So with that, I'm over to the speakers. Thank you.
I think the second. Welcome again, and maybe a couple of more times I would get chance to speak. Universal ethics. No. Universal ethics. One fact I would like to reveal before you, that it is so unfortunate for a country like India that on a Google, if you try to search few names of ethicists, you'll hardly come across. Hardly. And if you start searching scientists, educationists, doctors, so many, ethicists, no one. So that means there is a lot of scope for each one of you sitting in this august gathering to fill up the gap. Fill up the gap. So unfortunate for country with rich heritage of, scientific knowledge, spiritual knowledge, everything. But we are yet to have too many ethicists on this earth. Well, this topic is universal ethics. I would like to say that ethics itself is universal. And that is the only thing that distinguishes ethics with morality. Morality may differ from individual to individual, but ethics has to be one and same all over the world, number one. And number two, since time immemorial, the concept of ethics has remained same and it is going to remain same in the future also. No confusion at all. Universally acceptable principles are ethics. Whether it is New York or Jumri Taliya, principles are same. So with that, let me go ahead contemporary world challenges, how can we live together with differing and conflicting values? We all know that, after every 100 miles or so, everything changes. The language, culture, beliefs. Even in this hall, you are having several people. Okay, that is the beauty of everything. I mean, human being essentially. So basically, if we want to create an environment where all of us live happily, we have to identify the commonalities. All such things which are liked by one and all. What are those things? And that is universal ethics. That will bring us together. That can help us live happily. And then, is the answer yes, but how? And from where do we start? First of all, we have to see that what is the difference between we and they. Always we use, they are doing like this, they are doing. Instead of having, I read somewhere, we approach, all of us. Can't we have that? Instead of we, they approach. Always government or other section of society, other religious people. All of us belong to a human fraternity. So we have to believe that. This is a concept that I have developed. This is individual, societal, global, in so citizenship. Individual citizenship. We have to apply for this individual citizenship. What is happening? That we have individual value system that is personal, and then we have professional value system. Then we have universal value system. What is your view upon humanity? That is universal value system. Your relationship with yourself, with your boss, and with your family, with your community, with your nation, with your religion, all these things we have to minutely see. Now, whether professional success is balanced with personal success is very important. We talk of peace. How can peace come if both are in a divergent mode? So, this is an example. Elon Musk, personal life disturbed. You must have heard of him. Young man, billionaire, US. And he had to remarry the same girl after 5 years. And now he's again thinking that so many would like to marry him. He is a multi-billionaire. But he says, a person of my liking, who likes me. So there is a deviation between the success that he has attained personally and success he attained professionally. Same thing, the other example, negative psycho-impact addiction he developed. The person who developed this like button, then he started a movement against this. He has formed a group. He said no, though it is his creation, but psychological disorder. He is dead against this like button. So, personally also you need emotional balance. Emotional intelligence is a core thing of this conclave, and we have to be very clear about emotional intelligence. What does it mean? We have IQ and EQ, emotional quotient and intelligence quotient, intellectual quotient. Intellectual quotient plus emotional quotient together makes emotional intelligence. That is, IQ is also important. Without IQ, only emotions will not pay. And only emotion will also not pay. So that is the, thrust of our entire discussion, that we have to create a balance between the two, and that is nothing but emotional intelligence. So, we have to explore whether universal ethics can create a balance between, professional and personal successes. That is another. Individual and then societal citizenship. Whether individual success matches societal success. While self-interested behavior enables, Kaushik Basu wrote a paper, very good paper, yesterday itself in the newspaper, that it is in the long-term interest of the society that we nurture individual values. Otherwise, no matter how good your policies, strategies, plannings are, they will not be implemented. So this is in our vested interest. Yes?
Sorry, sir, can you please repeat the last sentence?
It is in the long-term interest of the society that we nurture individual values. Otherwise, no matter how good your strategies are, policies are, they would not be implemented. And therefore, this universal ethics that we are talking, it is not something that, out of charity, out of, concern for the society and, humanitarian ground we are talking. For our existence. Because when we talk of artificial intelligence, etc., we are going to be enslaved by the technology if we do not develop equally the emotional aspect, which is not the domain of artificial intelligence. You'll be surprised. Through artificial intelligence, now they are publishing the 7th volume of Harry Potter, developed by a robot, is far better than the earlier one, which was produced by a man. This is a great challenge. Out of compulsion, we have come here and have started discussing all these things. Otherwise, we will be enslaved. We'll be just enslaved. Already you are saying that with mobile, how much mobile is directing you, dictating you, and how much dependent you have become upon your mobile. Everything they are going to supersede. Anyhow, so global citizenship, whether individual success matches global success. Holistic approach to small acts, the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, virtual threats, human rights violations, environment concern, terrorism, recession. Virtual threats, by pressing a button, they can harm entire your information system, everything, totally hacked. And nowadays, your Facebook knows much more than what your father knows you. Everything transparent. They know everything, and now they are doing a lot of things with those information. And you will be surprised that 5 years back, not recently, 5 years back, Bank of London, they had floated a tender for typewriters. Because Americans, they used to hack everything. It is old technology typewriters through which you can save your information. So this is the scenario. Okay? Points to ponder. We worry about artificial intelligence ruling us in future, but what about our own intelligence ruling us now? That is at a very pathetic state. So internal surveillance is very important. And this internal surveillance means that something which has not been explored so far by the technology, All the solutions, all the problems that you're facing in front of you, solutions has to come from within, original solutions. That somehow has so far not been, hacked or, scanned by some technology. Otherwise, that domain will also go out from you. Somehow, I don't know till what extent that will remain your domain. I mean, otherwise, that can be, taken away. So ships don't sink because of water around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets in them. Okay, within. We have to look out for that, and every solution has to come and will come from there only. Because, since knowledge is in the air today, knowledge is in the air, anyone can access and easily access as you can access. So the only thing that is left out is something within you that is original, unique solutions. So we have to, explore that area. We need to see how UE can help us in managing our internal thoughts first. The world is nothing but a summation of multiple internal thoughts, internal surveillance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. That was very good. And I will just say that I think the creator of Harry Potter, though, was a woman. Gender balance in this country is something we need to take up, so I'm clarifying that. I will next invite Dr. Sharma to please. Thank you.
I hope now my voice is fine. I would like to begin my whole purpose of coming and thesis first by acknowledging and paying my gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. As a child also, I was very aware of his presence because of the kind of background I came from, history, archaeology, from parental side. But when I really met him, I got my chance, just to be closer, look at him. I think it hit me very hard that this is what ethics is. And I really have spent 16 years in DU, Mishraji. And after that in MDI, I really mastered my specialization subject, helping the corporates maximizing exploitation in terms of harnessing the talent and giving some money in exchange. And, last 3-4 years, I'm just shifting to ethics. I have to teach in a business school. I'm embedded in a business institution. So I have to teach business ethics. And of course, I begin from all good ethical theories, which have been present from Aristotle, Socrates onwards. We have good framework of justice, John Rowell. We have good framework of rights. We have good framework from duty, Cantinian. But I really always had a question that has it really made us good human beings? So my purpose of being here today actually is to really be able to, learn more, listen more, and possibly say a little bit, which I thought about, on being a good human being. Now, the second thing I want to say is, I really have stopped at this slide for my introduction where I was telling Taverila please limit my introduction, because that is what has happened as a very material meritocracy orientation. I think now I am growing up. And my teacher, as I have written here, student of Tibet House under Venerable Geshe La, I call you. So I'm very, very indebted to him, very, very indebted to him, because my travel on this path was accidental. And I'm just taking half more minute to talk about it, because it is important, in this particular space where we're not only talking about merit and academic and my knowledge, I'm talking about my being from heart. So I hope it's okay with the audience. I take your permission. So it was an accidental tourist visit to Dharamshala. And I was very aware of it through my daughter, who was a part of Young Tibet group and all that. And I go there and I land, as if, the karma, the imprint actually ensured that, into a teaching by a Tibetan couple, sharing their translating equipments without any idea. I mean, I landed at 5 o'clock in the morning and they handhold me, they get a room to me. I went all alone by myself. And they took me to teaching of His Holiness Dalai Lama. It was on ultimate and conventional reality and ultimate reality. And that was the hook. I could hear and understand a little bit. And I thought, oh my goodness, if this is not the learning, if this is not the life, what is education, learning and life? Next step was Tushita Center, Dharamshala. Glenn was our teacher. Next was Hoskas. There I met Ankit and many people who said, oh, have you also been to Tibet House? And that was again a very formal cursory visit. And Geshila, I don't look back anymore. Thank you. Naresh ji sitting here. He once asked me that, who's your teacher? And I looked, I would say through him. Because teacher, I really thought, can I really make one person a teacher? And this is a life we lead. We can't even eulogize one person in our life. We can't. Because we see all the things around everybody. Today I have a teacher, Nareshji. Thank you for pointing that out. And last on this, Kaveri, you quoted from Praman Vartika. And I'm very tempted to say that when I think of His Holiness, I don't think of him as a teacher. I think of him Sugata, actually the living Buddha icon. And I'm not saying it because I have hero worshipped anybody in my life. I have been religious, I have been to temples, I have, have symbols in my life. But living being, I was so arrogant, high-headed young person who said, living person, a God, it's impossible. God also, I do not know how. It's my, how they exist. I was religious, but having, same kind of questions. Scientific temperament, logic, couldn't really be my language because of bringing up, but I thought that is supreme. And still, I think it's a good idea for communication language. But possibly the irrational subjective part of a person is also equally beautiful. And possibly the heart, when we talk about, we actually talk about that irrational subjective part, which is still dreams more than what world actually dictates us to dream. Materialism, success, power. Mishra ji, I'm very thankful to you also for providing this platform. Delhi University has been a place where I've spent 16 years. And actually, I really felt a lot of good presence there. MDI 2006 onwards, I am embedded in a high, successful business domain, reading, writing, training. And more years I spent, more I got very, very convinced that we need to do far more different way of teaching our talent, education. Education, because that is a very hardcore, money-oriented, with a lot of goodness around it in business, but the core purpose of especially, I would say, private corporations is ultimately to create profit. Profit with responsibility. There are a lot of dialogues. I've been part of it. But is that enough? No. It's like Robin Hood phenomena. And when I really thought of ethics and business ethics, and so this is what exactly. So presentation I would make. And this presentation is not a proper presentation. This presentation is only just some ideas which yesterday night, I just jotted down very roughly. But actually the idea is the thought or the dialogue around us. So thank you, Mishra ji, for this particular beginning. DU is a very right place. Possibly we will include the business schools also in future in India. I have already shared with Gisela that the desire, and this is the purpose of being present here, desire which I carry, desire, if it is a negative word, I'll say the purpose I carry. Purpose I carry is, can we really imprint the corporates with universal ethics, compassion and wisdom? We really need that. Why do I say that? I have a thesis around it. There was a time we had religious institution and ethics framework, morality based, norm based. They collapsed, and rightly so, because the consequences were not very contained. Then came the rights and the duty framework. We have gained from the religious framework. We have also gained from the rights and duty framework. Today we have legal constitution. Thanks to that, there's some sense of justice, some sense of rights we can exercise. So I'm grateful to all those development personally as a person reading that. But having said that, as on today, if I just come back to the current reality, the way I view it, and I and many like me sitting in the business den, is that not only the moral institutions, but also the government, has been corporatized. So religion, you have to study how to run the most successful business where you don't give much money, especially the enrollment membership is high, people follow you like mad. Leadership, if it's defined by followership, then please study any religious institution, possibly you'll get the ideal model. Because there only people just go, give all the money and still membership is on. What I really, really liked in that when I'm talking about religion, I actually am very religious and I'm very okay with folding my hand in the temples. And when I came to Tibet House, and before that His Holiness, I heard, then all the other places I've been to, I felt that the religion's very good part was coming out. But what I really, really, really appreciated was how the knowledge is separated from religion, with the good part of the religion, but also it is not separated from heart. It's not only logical, rational way of teaching ABCD and the formulas and the curriculums and the logics around it. It also is talking about emotions and heart. And that has tied me, and I carry this purpose of carrying this, and this is what my thesis is today. If it is okay with the audience, and I take your permission for that, I will also like to just have 4 minutes YouTube video. Now the idea is, because when I came to know about the conference, I told Geshe-la that I will like to do something on VUCA. And he said, what is VUCA? And I said, oh, I live with it. I live with it because any business leadership, any business discourse, any student's classroom is, as it is happening since morning out here, is not complete without artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, it happens with us also, because ultimately, we get limited by the language and the thoughts in that domain, and if you don't use it, you're not heard. So it's like a kind of compulsion, I'll say, that I also got into it, though I could see where the man or machine, a man, I say again, person it should be. That's how the languages are, inheritance. Okay. So coming back, one quick thing I'd like to share, very, very quick thing. I was beginning my class on human resource management for most high percentile, 99 top India students group. And I called Ernst & Young, senior director, for my first session. He comes there, he does 4 cases. In all 4 cases, 4 functions of HR. Some of you have that background, so how to assess, how to recruit, how to assess performance, how to compensate them, and how to, have retention. 4 cases of AI, and he ended with HR is dead. For me, HR is not practice. For me, HR is human beings. Second session was mine. So I also added, okay, see a video, death of HR. And next, I just quickly want to share, something which has happened, which happened in my teaching life. I just went and asked them to write 5 names. Each student, 60 students in the class, 122 sections. Write 5 names of the people who have impacted in your life. And later, I searched also, actually, when I was thinking about it, there is a Boetis model also around it, 10 names, they say. They all very high, they arrogant set I deal with because they topped the talent exam of India. They all wrote, and they all are AI generation. They write us off in many, many ways for a while. So they all wrote 5 names, and the only thing I just asked was, look at those names. What did they do with you? Was it a positive intervention or a negative intervention? All the 5 names in the list, in majority of the cases, except 1 or 2, were all the people who positively, helped that student. And I said, this is where AI and HR is different. Artificial intelligence will actually go to the minutest details and give you a report card. But a person is required to tell you to go more than that. Work on your negatives and nurture your positives and be able to contribute. And that is what I see is a role. And there I see ethics to be a very, very prominent presence. And there I see not only the old ethics schools, but actually His Holiness Dalai Lama's universal ethics to actually be the base. This is my thesis. Now, what I'm going to do in 5-7 minutes left for me, or 10 minutes. So just give me an idea, so accordingly I'll monitor. 4 minutes of video I want to show you. This video is on VUCA, simply. What is VUCA? Business world, governments, they're talking about VUCA. VUCA is nothing but disruption, 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 and highly changing society. And how I really want it to be translated by VUCA of His Holiness. That's what I have done. So can we just, yeah, okay. So can I take 2 more minutes? So all right, so this is VUCA is. Okay. Volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. This is a world we are living in. And why has it happened? Only because of a beautiful, fast-paced development in the world of artificial intelligence and machine language. Whatever we see, something more comes out. And the best example is the Facebook and the grilling in the parliament. I mean, this is really an eye-opener. So So my thesis is, after all these words in the clip which you've already seen, what I see is if anywhere there's a beautiful explanation, it is in the text we are studying with Yogeshila. And two books with which I began, which actually was mentioned also in the morning, Ethics of New Millennium and Beyond Religion, which is a part of my curriculum. But am I really succeeding totally? No, we need a lot of efforts in actually hand-holding the formal ethical, business ethical understanding versus the people-based universal ethics understanding. Disruptions are now. Conflict-ridden society marked by aggression and violence is the reality we live in. It's very close to us. Greatest danger in the time of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is the act with the yesterday's logic. And that is one thing of Peter Drucker, the management guru, I thought I should take in. So we need to have new logic. New logic, the very first thing, Mishra ji, actually, I would differ there with you. I really think ethics still is an ambiguous term. And ambiguity gives us a space to interpret. So I'm partly grateful to that. And in this ambiguity, the ultimate understanding business has actually derived, which actually is the government's derivation also I see from outside, the way I see, limited to my perception, is shared value and mutually agreed upon processes for dealing with adversity and change. But unfortunately, they begin with the very first utilitarian approach, Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. And utilitarian approach sounds so good, greatest good for greatest number, but actually can be exploited to the hilt when, it is in the hands of people, which in the morning you said very rightly, power is to destroy, not to nurture. I'm quoting you, Mishraji, there. And this is where utilitarian approach will be on the lips of all the leaders, business and government today. And that is one thing, which possibly is a narrative we need to question and relook into. Then we have normative ethics, I've already talked about it, duties, rights, and all those framework. Ultimately, one thing I want to point out in this particular presentation, when I really read all the theories for my classrooms and actually for my life, first, I thought some of them are preaching. So I said knowing. Some set of that, like rights and duties, were action. So I said, okay, knowing part of a human being, doing part of a human being. When I read ethics in New Millennium, I said, this is being part of us, becoming. And this is the aspiration I carry. that, let it be becoming on compassion and wisdom, no less. I come to the something I'm learning with Geshe-la. Based on 5 aggregates, right viewing, and I'm just, the compassion and wisdoms, where like what is the basic to work on. And I will just like to, end this slide, keeping the time in mind, by just one quote. It's beautiful to have hugely, consumer-oriented society. Consumption, production consumption is a norm. But the whole thing is, when the craft people are dying, we still, wear clothes, but chemical oriented. But farmers, when they die, because we are really not taking care, we are not being ethical with the basis, what will we eat is a big question. How long we will survive on chemical food? So our existence is under threat. It is not a time to really say, somebody will look after it, I can be happy. I think the universal ethics of compassion and wisdom is urgency now. It's not something we need to talk about. How to really get that urgency in the curriculum, education curriculum, being there on that side, and especially in the business education, I think it's very, very big challenge. I need support from almost everyone who could contribute to that at whatever level to actually have the footprints at that level. Because I see my thesis today is even the governments are managed by business in all over from US to India. There are some quotes I just want to end with from His Holiness Dalai Lama, which I really thought makes sense and really gives a big case. So one is ethics is the indispensable interface between my desire to be happy and yours. I really like this sentence. And this is so true, because ultimately it is the happiness we seek, even if I slog 24 hours for whatever I'm equipped to through education. Another ethical act is one which doesn't harm others' experience or expectation of happiness. So if we are not cutting from anybody else, why don't we walk this path is a question. Another, peace in the world depends on the peace in the hearts of individuals. This depends on each of us practicing ethics by disciplining our negative thoughts and emotions and developing basic spiritual quality. Spiritual can be reinterpreted in many other words if there is an issue with the connotative meaning with that. Leader's Way was the book I was reading. Again, so beautifully, so simply, it has been taken out as a guide map for us. Last, universal ethics. The way I have understood in my limited understanding based on my, studying and plus some books at my level. It is education of the heart, as very well said in the morning. Teaching love, compassion, sense of equity, equality and justice. Forgiveness, mindfulness, tolerance and peace. If this sounds like virtue, universal responsibility sounds like a burden, then possibly I could shift to this particular, last but one, it should be. That secular approach or universal approach is a better word as on today because of the connotative meaning assigned to the secular and the conflicts. That it is beyond religion. That one particular word is sufficient to explain this slide. We can have our beliefs, but we still can have common property with all the religions also preach anyway of compassion and wisdom. This is one sentence I picked up from the Roots Institute when I was attending Geshe-la's retreat on compassion. And I'm quoting it here, Geshe-la, with your permission. Be wisely kind to yourself and others. That's been kind of thing, I'm living with. Be wisely kind to yourself and others. And I'm closing with that. And just last slide, VUCA reinterpreted as per His Holiness directions. Value-based is V, U is universal ethics, C is compassion, and for a happy life. Thank you so much, and my apology for exceeding the time. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much to Tanuja ji. And I just want to pick up on one thing that was highlighted in the VUCA concept, and that is the notion of interdependency, interconnectedness. She spoke about values in business. I think we are all reading about Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, and Mark Zuckerberg in his presentation to the US Congress actually said that, in the 2019 elections in India, Facebook is not going to play a role. So interconnectedness, interdependency, the world is more so than ever before. Business interests are huge, and yet it's a key concept in Buddhism with a lot of possibility. So thank you for that wonderful presentation, and over to Professor Singh.
Respected Chairperson, colleagues and friends, good afternoon to all of you. It is. It is indeed a great honor to be participating in this conclave, and I would like to thank Geshe-la of Tibet House and Dr. Mishra of Ramanujan College for organizing this. I just want to mention that some of the points which I'm going to raise in my paper have already been mentioned by the previous speakers. So if I sound a bit repetitive, please bear with me. And in my paper, I have actually tried to understand, what it means to be a young person. We've been talking about youth and their identity formation. Why universal ethics are important in their identity formation. So the title of my paper is Youth, Identity and Education. This paper will try to explore the concepts of youth, identity and education and the role education plays in the construction of one's identity. Keeping in mind the paradigm of universal ethics, it is imperative to look at the value-based education in universal terms for the holistic development of individuals in the context of their intellect, emotion, sensation, and intuition. Educationists have been debating on the implications of education, whether it is functional in its approach, that is, it socializes and restores order, whether it legitimizes and perpetuates inequality, whether it empowers, subjugates, and controls, or whether it has the power to transform and radicalize the society. In the Indian context, however, egalitarian we may try to conceive education to be. Yet, we are served with the hard reality of non-secular, non-egalitarian, instrumental, divisive, fragmented, hierarchical, compartmentalized, bureaucratic structure of education. While all along, our Indian philosophers have argued on the essential nature of education, how it should be, that is, incorporating all social classes, caste, linguistic, and religious variations, vernacular in nature, moralistic in approach, flexible and spontaneous in method, beyond oppression and domination. European, American, and Indian educationists are increasingly concerned as to whether current methods of teaching, testing, and examining at school and at university may not unduly favor the conformist mentality and discourage spontaneous, independent, and critical thought among those children who might make future original contributions to the arts, sciences, and technologies. It seems that both parents and teachers want to produce the conventional, socially well-adjusted child and view the unusually talented student with suspicion, as children with very high IQs face difficulties of adjustment. Despite the celebration of the new modern age, we all came to know about the heightened differentiation, division of labor and economic disorder, bureaucratization, rationalization and disenchantment, and alienation and class conflict, the characteristic features of the previous centuries. Discontents of modernity were seen through the emergence of a society bringing forth the onslaught of culture industry, the colonization of the life world, and the microphysics of power. with its nuanced practice of discipline and surveillance. The hyper-real era of postmodernity, of simulation and globalization are continually being reflected upon. Moreover, even though the primary problems of war, famine, poverty, disease, debt, drugs, environmental pollution, the displacements of people are not questions of value and symbolism, yet these matters are culturally inflected, bound up with beliefs and identities, and increasingly enmeshed in doctrinal systems. It is in this context that philosophers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tagore, and Sri Aurobindo gave us a profound sense of humanism by introducing us to the transformative values and a deep conviction in ethical beliefs and behavior. Here I'd like to quote His Holiness. My wish is that one day formal education will pay attention to the education of the heart, teaching love, compassion, justice, forgiveness, mindfulness, tolerance, and peace. This education is necessary from kindergarten to secondary schools and universities." Unquote. Further, His Holiness says, "I'm convinced that today's young people can achieve a more peaceful world if they cultivate warm-heartedness and inner peace." Unquote. Let us now try to understand the concepts of youth and identity. Youth is generally perceived as a state of becoming that may or may not lead to an independent status with a stable sense of identity. Besides the universal dimension of psychological, physiological, and emotional development, it is the social, cultural, and historical aspect that defines the experience of being young. For the Greeks, particularly Aristotle, childhood, youth, and old age were the three eyes of man. According to the United Nations, for policy and institutional purposes, youth comprises persons belonging to 15 to 25 age group. Now it has increased to 30. That is in the state of transition. In India, the term youth implies a segment of population that has crossed adolescence but not acquired full adulthood, as it is still a stage of acquiring knowledge of dharma that eventually leads to its practice in terms of competence, love, care, and wisdom, as suggested by Kakkar. Pilcher says that youth, with other stages of life, of course, is prone to change, compromise, and structural constraints. Thus, one needs to move on from visions of youth as a period devoid of integral legitimacy or meaning, and to recognize the significance to it of changing structural, material, and interactional circumstances. The young today are not creating a unidimensional monolith culture. Diverse images of youth emerge that reflect the celebratory, passive active agency, terrifying reality, and perhaps the compassionate as well, in the contemporary period of rapid change that is known for globalization, virtualization, terrorism, and consumerism. Improvements in the living standards of parents have benefited the young. They go for shopping sprees, lunching and dining in cafes, restaurants and malls, buy expensive designer clothes, entertain themselves through sports and audiovisual equipments and tourism. Even market and advertising is aimed at targeting the group, as they have sufficient movies available for their indulgences. However, the greatest gift given to the young adolescents is, in Erickson's word, a psychosocial moratorium. That is, while waiting to commit themselves personally and socially, they mark time and experiment with their lives. It is at this juncture that the role of value-based education becomes very significant. Because whether the adolescents are going through what Hall calls a time of storm and stress, or images of youth that Davis has highlighted in terms of the themes of rebellion, moodiness, and angst, delinquency, sinfulness, energy, excitement, and idealistic views of future society, it is media and adults that reinforce these stereotypes. The formation or question of their identity in a similar manner cannot acquire a coherent and fixed meaning. The elusiveness of identity in the current fragmented context is what emerges in the form of shifting self-images. Mallon and Peirce, in their work, neither offer a utopian view of youth or a dystopian view of universal youth negativity, despair, and apathy. Identity, subjectivity, and agency create multiple intersections, and hence their identity cannot be totalized. They form a highly differentiated group in terms of class, gender, ethnicity, along with their social, economic, and political factors. Erikson has written extensively about identity formation and the various psychosocial crises extending through one's lifespan in order to reach personal maturity. Education, thus, can help the youth in the search for their identity, which in fact becomes very acute during adolescence as a result of rapid changes in the biological, social, and psychological aspects of the individual, and also because it is an appropriate time to make occupational and personal commitments. Daniel Goleman also expands the concept of emotional intelligence on similar lines. He divides it into 4 parts: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. With those parts nest specific competences that make people more effective as leaders or in the workplace. Today, the greater freedom for the young carries with it more risks and costs of errors of judgment: dropping out of school, being out of work, teenage pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, being homeless, drug addiction, delinquency, and suicide are powerful examples of the price that some young people pay for their extended freedom. In India today, not only does the notion of youth sell, but also the modes of production and consumption and their representation, whether it is in the field of politics, art, literature, sports, cinema, music, etc. Contemporary discourse and policies are imbued with a youthful imagery of the daughters as the new sons and the sons as the new daughters, and rhetoric that is enthusiastic about the emerging young country. In India, it has often been flaunted by the media that 54% of our population falls under the age of 30. In such a case, the role of youth in nation building is undoubtedly crucial. To what extent they emerge as an agency of social change impinges upon the development of their identity. This self-awareness just might save them from being conformists, retreatists, or rebels. Perhaps this will give rise to the youth culture of innovation and change that seems to be the need of the hour, as our world even today is facing violence and terror, ecological degradation, rampant poverty, colonialism, consumerism, human trafficking, and gender discrimination. Many areas still lack the basic amenities like clean drinking water, food, basic health facilities, and shelter. With such a scenario, we need to cross the frontiers of languages, races, regions, and faiths if we want to deepen our understanding of issues important to us. Though most of the religious traditions seem to agree that humility, wisdom, kindness, and honesty are the necessary qualities that all humans must develop, yet religious teachings have rather been used to aggravate the sense of inequalities and turn one against the other. It is here that the universal ethics professed by His Holiness gains currency, which probably will or can bring us out of the moral black hole. Educating one's heart on the basis of wisdom, morality, and concentration will help one to follow the middle path. Also, by developing qualities and values propounded in the model of universal education, such as humility, patience, contentment, delight, kindness, honesty, generosity, respect, forgiveness, gratitude, and courage will help maximize human happiness and flourishing. I would like to end with the example of Tagore's early educational struggles that he actually related to Swami Yogananda. I quote, "I fled from school after the 5th grade, and obviously the dreary disciplinary atmosphere of a schoolroom suffocated me, and hence he thought of unquote, and hence he opened up Shantiniketan under the shady trees and glories of the sky. He further added, "A child is in his natural setting amidst the flowers and songbirds. There he may more easily express the hidden wealth of his individual endowment. True education is not pumped and crammed in from outward sources, but aids in bringing to the surface the infinite hoard of wisdom within." Unquote. Thank you.
Wonderful, Renukaji. Thank you so much. So we've heard there about India as a young country, but what we do with this youth demographic is really a big question when there's so much illiteracy. And I also want to, because identity was brought up very beautifully by Seringla in the morning's thing, and a little bit here pay tribute to Tibetan youth that I interact with via Tibet House staff mostly and in other interactions, and how they have held on to certain values. I think there is an imbibing of the law of causality, which we have to question in this country as well, when we see now a lot of instances of violence and things, gender, caste, many things that were brought out. So thank you very much. And over to Father Chandran Kunal.
Dear Dr. Kaveri Gill, my fellow panelists, Venerable Gashela, Damdul Dorji, Dr. Sering, respected delegates, and my dear friends, Tashi Delek. I know you are all hungry and maybe not in a mood to listen to, but I think still it is time for us so that we can have some food for thought. So I am coming up with a larger frame of education, and basing on that, how our education is really to be critically evaluated, and then how can some alternative measures can be made. So in our Indian tradition, we have these two, that is Shiksha and Vidya. And there are also a few quotations from some of the great traditions from India. That is, Upanishads used to say that, education is that whose end product is salvation. That is a spiritual outlook. And Adi Shankaracharya said that education is the realization of the self. And the contemporary 20th century, we have this great sage Vivekananda, who said that education is the manifestation of divine perfection already existing in man. So you can see that there is an integral vision about the total transformation of the human being, and through that the transformation of the society at large. Then looking to the western side, that is Plato. Plato said that education develops in the body and soul of the pupil all the beauty and all the perfection he is capable of, he or she is capable of. There you can see that there is not only merely the rationality, but also the intuition, the aesthetics, the beauty, and the compassion. So it's again an integral vision. Then the Enlightenment Rousseau said that education is the child's development from within. That is the need for the transformation from within. And our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, said that education means an all-around drawing out of the best in the child and an integration of man's body, mind, and the spirit. So again, the need of a total transformation of the human person. So we can see that an analysis of these definitions reveals that human personality has different facets. That is the physical, that is, the health, and also the physical development, the psychological, the mental, and the social, and also the spiritual. It is the task of education to ensure the harmonious and well-balanced development of these innate powers of an individual by providing a nurturing and conducive environment for their growth and development. And the social dimension. Kaudilya of the Arthashastra, who says that education means training for the country and love for the nation. So that is for the social dimension. And one of the American educators, philosopher of education, John Dewey, has said that all educational processes by the participation of the individual in the social consciousness of the race. So it is how to participate in the social the society. Then again, another one, Brown says, education is the consciously controlled progress whereby changes in behavior are produced in the person and through the person within the group. So the transformation of the person and through the integration of different persons contributing to the transformation of the society. Then there is again a few more. George Payne considers three main functions of education. They are assimilation of traditions, development of new social patterns. Yes, somebody was saying that, the brainwashing. So, and creative and constructive role. So, how the social traditions, the heritage are transmitted. Then again, another sociologist, Emily Durkheim, the French sociologist. So, the major function of education is the transmission of society's norms and values. So we have what is the role of education? There is the individual aims, then there is also the social aims. So education must be engineered to ensure physical, intellectual, ethical, emotional, vocational, and spiritual development of the individual, and thus formation of the society in an integrated manner. So we have the concentrated on the role of emotions. Emotions are unique traits of the human organism. There are whole ranges of human emotions ranging from positive to negative. There is no doubt that both types of emotions have their own significance so far as the personality development of individuals concerned. However, education should not only aim at developing and strengthening positive emotions, but developing self-control over negative emotions. Today, Dr. Misra was saying that, quoting our Prime Minister, that, as a nation, we have failed because of, the controlling of our own negative emotions. Not only today, but we can see that, so much of information, transformation, education, and everything, but still we are maybe in the wild ways of living. So the ethical dimension, the individual is always expected to possess a good moral or ethical character. It is ethics that distinguishes man from animal. Ethics is the law of humanity. Education for character building is always given top priority while formulating the aims of education. According to Raymond, education's ultimate concerns is to cultivate not wealth of muscles or fullness of knowledge, not refinement of feeling, but strength and purity of character. So that is the role of education, that is a character formation. But how far today's education is capable of giving a character transformation? I think this is this educational conference, I think, really to be congratulated. But as one of the other panelists was saying that, there is a crisis. So there is a crisis in education. So it is very essential that we have to come together to reflect about and evaluate and try to develop alternative measures. What are the failures? What are the problems? And how we can counter to it? This philosopher John Dewey said that all education forms character, mental and ethical, true education can develop in students the ability to distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad, and what is desirable and undesirable. But how far we are capable of giving such a character formation, I think that leads to the crisis of today. So our one of the very prominent presidents of India, the philosopher, he said that, what is the core of education? It is the spiritual transformation. Making the individual feel that he has within himself something deeper than intellect. Call it spirit if you like. So unfortunately, the problem of today, I think that we only consider about the head or the intellect, and we, as many of the panelists were speaking about, forgotten about the heart, the transformation of the conscience, as well as that of our own controlling of our own emotions. So we have different systems of education, and I am not going to elaborate on that. We have experience. So in India, we have the Gurukula system, and then the Nalanda tradition. And I just want to give an emphasis on the Nalanda tradition because, they have given more importance to the character formation, the transformation of the person. As an example, there is the teacher Shantideva. Shantideva's Bodhisattva Charyavadara. So in that small booklet, you will find that, anger. We only know that anger, but 80 different varieties of anger is elaborated there, and how to transform or how to change these types of anger, hatred, jealousy, and other things, this has been highlighted. And even today, when I was teaching physics at Bailakupa, the Sera J Monastery, they were telling me that the whole year they are being trained in memorizing and also meditating on Bodhisattva Charyavadara. But where we have an education thinking about controlling of anger, controlling of jealousy or hatred, do we ever have in any of the educational institutions? We don't have. Where we can counter, or where we so I think that it is very essential that we have to fill in, molded in these various forms. So we have at present what we have is the European education, and in the European education what we have is a kind of data processing. And it is simply filling in. And even today in many of the universities, what we have is that, the teacher comes and lectures. And then what is that? Simply data, that is the head is something like a dustbin, and simply putting, and rather than we are not given a kind of, I don't know whether you will be agreeing with that, but I have found so what we need is that, to open the horizon. Open the horizon of the student, and that is not happening. And that is, I think, it is the failure of our educational system. How it is possible, that is the challenge for today. So the post-independence also, we can see that, we have the Kothari Commission and the planning commissions, and they're all, economical development, technological development, and they never thought about the character formation. And then see what is the Western educational systems have been transformed to India, and then creating the same sort of societies here in India. So we have great traditions, but unfortunately we have never inculcated such systems, and therefore simply kind of copying that system, how it is possible that we can take up our own models and then establish the educational system into a transformative mode. So, what is the educational system? I come from the science tradition. I have been trained in quantum mechanics, and I could very well understand when Dr. Tanuja was speaking about the uncertainty, the chaos, and all other things. Our present generation is that it comes from the quantum mechanics. So, what the science, what the present system is, a steamrolling of science and technology. So this is the methodology the science is speaking about. And what is there is a methodology there. I am not going to elaborate it on. What is the lacking there is that the qualitative dimension. Everything is now changed into the quantitative dimension. Even a color, yellow color, you have a certain amount of wavelength, an Armstrong. That is what we are saying, that there is no color at all. So the way the science is looking at the universe is simply quantity, and the quality has been deeply or totally eliminated. I think that is the problem with and then moreover, we can also see that the science and technology speaks about only the what is observable. What is observable is the basis. That means, anything beyond that, any kind of spirituality or a spiritual dimension, the self, it is not possible to be observed. So therefore, it has to be eliminated. So they themselves, the Western society has themselves spoke about it. That is, Edmund Husserl in the 1930s, the crisis of European society. We can see that again. Heidegger was speaking about, and he was very critical of this science and technology, saying that it is merely calculative, and we have to change from this calculative dimension to a meditative dimension. And that was again Gadamer was saying, and then also the postmodernist Derrida, he was also saying. So what I propose is that a quantitative dimension as the sole criteria of the knowing process. So that is what is happening today. Qualitative dimension is altogether eliminated. Color, beauty, metaphysical ideas, spirituality, all reduced or eliminated. Ethical is eliminated because of the spiritual is unacceptable. And then we can also see that there is a process that is earlier there is the spiritual dimension, then it was called as morality, and when the spiritual dimension is eliminated, it has become ethics. And then when you can also see that in the corporate field, instead of the ethics, they are speaking in terms of responsibility. So you can see that how it is changing. And though Gashela and the others are speaking about ethics, I think that within maybe a few years, even that ethics will be eliminated merely to reduce to responsibility. So we are now speaking in terms of CSR. So the CSR now will be overtaking this ethical dimension, and nobody else will be speaking anymore about ethics. So, so the role of emotions and disciplines, and we have never cared for, and how we have to bring in. So perhaps you all might have heard about Matthew Ricord. Matthew Ricord is one of the said to be the most happiest person in the world, and you know about him as he started as a microbiologist who was expected to be a Nobel Prize winner, but the core, there is a beautiful book, most of you might have read about it, that is he was living with his father, who was a journalist and then philosopher, Raval, and then he says that he met Yeah, yeah. So he met lots of people who are perfect, but they have lost the serenity of life, and he found there with the Tibetan lamas, and then he wanted to become. So that was the reason why he came to India, and then that transformation. So Matthew Record was speaking that there is we need to have a contemplative dimension of science, a contemplative science. So our science is to be kind of counterbalanced by this contemplative science. So why what I am proposing today is that we speak about the science and technology, its problems and its foundational. So instead of that, I am saying that maybe we can all think about the possibility of that star community. The star community, what is S and T is for science and technology. That is the rationality and everything connected with it. And then from the religion, we have the compassion, the sacrifice, the love, and the other things. And then from the art, we have the aesthetics and the beauty. And it is not merely an individual transformation, but a community. And that community, as Dr. Misra was saying, that the Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, that is a family where it is given and take, and then where the equality, the love and care is there. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Chandan Kunal. So wonderful reference to Acharya Shantideva's book, and here in the morning's panel as well. His Holiness often talks about the map of emotions, and I think setting that out, also the reference to the monk and the philosopher is the book that I think is must reading for a lot of the younger people here, a discussion of Matthew Ricard with his father, who's a scientist. And I think in the end, to all the panelists, especially for the younger people here, I think all the panelists here really embody interdisciplinarity in their lives, both in their professional lives and their personal lives. And I think that's something, because for the younger generation, there is a lot of talk of interdisciplinarity, but how much of it is actually applied within the formal education system and, within. So I think something to take away. So wonderful speakers all. Thank you so much. And over to lunch.
I would like to thank everyone in the panel for this wonderful session. Now may I request Dr. B. Sringla to honor our panelists with the khatak and a souvenir. Dr. Kaveri Gilji. Father Dr. Matthew. Dr. T.K. Mishra ji. And Dr. Tanuja Sharma ji. And Dr. Renuka Singh ji. Thank you, Gela. We'll now break for lunch, and we will start the next session at 1:45. Thank you.